The first strike came without warning. Across the night sky, fire rained down like falling stars, but the people on the ground soon realized it was not beauty they were watching. It was invasion. Ships larger than mountains descended with blinding lights and a sound that made the earth tremble. The world was caught unprepared. The war that followed would forever change both humans and those who came from the stars. Among the chaos stood Aaron, a soldier who never asked to be one. He had been a medic before the sky broke apart, saving lives in the quiet halls of a hospital. But when the invasion began, his duties shifted from healing wounds to surviving battles. His hands still remembered how to hold tools of care, but now they also carried a weapon. In the middle of falling cities, his heart longed for saving rather than destroying. The aliens who came were not united. Some arrived as conquerors, their ships filled with soldiers and weapons. Others were healers, scientists and explorers who had no interest in war but were bound by their kind. One of them was her. She was not like the rest. With emerald skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dark and eyes sharp as a blade, she walked through fire not as an enemy but as a witness to suffering. Her name was Liara, and her oath was to preserve life, even among humans. When Aaron first saw her, it was not on the battlefield, but in the ruins of a clinic. He had been helping a wounded child when shadows fell over him. He thought it was another enemy soldier ready to strike him down, but instead she knelt beside him, her hands steady, her touch firm but gentle. She pressed something warm against the child's wound, and before his eyes the bleeding slowed. She looked at Aaron with something close to defiance, as if daring him to stop her. They did not speak at first. There was no time for words, only survival. But in those minutes, as the building crumbled around them and screams echoed from outside, a strange bond formed. He saw in her the same fire he carried, the refusal to let death win too easily. And she saw in him the rarest thing her people whispered about humans, something they had feared yet envied: resilience. The war did not pause for them. Outside, machines of war tore through streets, and soldiers clashed in shadows of fire. Yet Aaron found himself thinking of her even as he fought. Who was she really? Why had she saved that child when others of her kind were tearing cities apart? Each question pulled him deeper into a mystery he could not resist. Liara, too, found herself unsettled. Humans were supposed to be fragile, weak, ruled by chaos. But this man, broken and battered, stood again and again even when his body should have failed him. She told herself it was foolish to care, but her thoughts returned to him when silence fell. His pulse was strange to her, beating in ways that did not follow her people's patterns. It was wrong, yet strong. It disturbed her and it drew her closer. In nights between battles, when smoke filled the air and the ground shook, they crossed paths again. Sometimes she would heal the fallen he could not save. Sometimes he would shield her when her presence drew the anger of her own soldiers. Neither trusted completely, but neither could walk away. Something bound them that went beyond war, beyond duty. But fate is cruel, and it did not let them rest. One night Aaron collapsed, his body failing beneath the weight of wounds and exhaustion. He was carried into a hidden shelter, barely alive, his chest rising and falling with a rhythm too shallow, too broken. It was there that Liara found him, again lying beneath a blanket. His skin pale, his life slipping away. For the first time she felt fear not for herself but for him. She set out to care for him, but as her hands touched his skin she realized something deeper. His body was betraying him in ways she did not understand. His pulse was wrong. His breathing faltered. Yet in his fragile state she saw something terrifying and beautiful. Humanity refused to die easily. Aaron's breathing was uneven, every inhale shallow and rough. The shelter was dim, filled with the low hum of broken machines, and the scent of smoke that clung to everything. His fellow soldiers had left him there, believing he would not last until sunrise. In war, mercy was measured by time, and time was something no one had. But Liara remained. She could not walk away from him, even if every instinct told her it was dangerous to care. She leaned closer, her green fingers brushing his wrist. His pulse throbbed beneath her touch, not steady like her people's, but wild and unpredictable, like a drum played by a storm. It was wrong, yet there was power inside it. She whispered to herself in her own tongue, trying to understand. This human was fragile, but inside that weakness was something greater than strength. Aaron stirred, his lips parting as if caught in a dream. His eyes opened halfway, clouded with fever. He saw her face above him, the glow of her emerald skin, the softness in her expression. For a moment he thought he had crossed into some afterlife, that an angel had come for him. But then he remembered the war, the fire, the pain. He tried to sit up, but his body betrayed him, refusing to obey. "You should rest," Liara said softly, her words broken, but clear. She had learned fragments of human speech enough to be understood. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed her worry. "Your body fights itself." Aaron let out a weak laugh, though it hurt him. "Feels like it." His gaze locked on hers, and even in his state he noticed something. She was not like the others. There was no cruelty in her eyes, only determination. He wanted to ask why she was helping him, but the strength to form the question slipped away. Liara pressed a small device against his chest. It was warm, glowing with faint light. It scanned him, and the readings confused her. His heart was unstable, yet it fought with more force than any being she had ever studied. Every beat threatened collapse, but every collapse turned into survival. It was as if his body refused the order to die. She frowned, realizing this was why her kind feared humans. Not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, but because their bodies and spirits did not follow rules. They broke them. They survived when survival should be impossible. And now, here he was, proving every warning true. Outside the shelter, the sounds of battle grew louder. Explosions rattled the walls and dust rained from the ceiling. Liara looked toward the door, knowing her own people were near. If they found her here with him, she would be branded a traitor. Still, her hands did not move from his chest. She refused to leave him. Aaron's voice came again, faint but steady. Why are you here?" His eyes met hers with effort. It was a question not only of presence but of purpose. Why would an alien healer risk everything for one broken human? Liara hesitated, searching for words. In her language there were terms for duty, for science, for orders. But none of them fit what she felt. Finally she said, "Because you do not stop. Even broken you fight. I must see why." Her words made little sense to him, but her tone did. It was not pity. It was something stronger, something dangerous. He gave her the faintest smile before drifting back into unconsciousness. Liara leaned back, her thoughts a storm. She had crossed a line she could never return from. By saving him, she had chosen him over her own kind. Her oath had been to preserve life, but this went beyond oath. It was personal. She did not know why his wrong pulse mattered so much, only that it did. The shelter shook again, this time harder. Shouts echoed outside, alien voices searching, hunting. She had only moments to decide. Leave him and live, or stay and risk death. Her gaze fell on his still form, his fragile body wrapped beneath the blanket, and she realized the truth. She would not abandon him. As the door creaked under the weight of intruders, Liara placed herself between Aaron and the danger. She would protect him, even against her own people. And in that choice, the path of both their lives twisted into something no war could have predicted. The door to the shelter burst open with a violent crack. Shadows filled the room, tall figures with weapons glowing in the dark. Liara's people had found her. Their armor shimmered with cold light, their voices sharp as blades. One stepped forward, his eyes narrowing when he saw her kneeling beside the human. "Liara," he hissed, his voice full of accusation. "You break our law. You touch what must be destroyed." Her chest tightened. She had known this moment would come, but not so soon. Her mind raced as her body moved instinctively, spreading her arms protectively over Aaron's weak form. He is injured. He is no threat. The soldier sneered, pointing his weapon. Every human is threat, even broken. You shame your blood. Aaron stirred at the sound of voices. His eyes fluttered open, confusion swimming through fever. He saw figures standing with weapons aimed, their alien shapes blurred by his weak vision. But he heard Liara's voice firm and steady. She was standing between him and death. Another soldier stepped forward, his tone colder. Move aside. You are healer, not savior. This creature dies tonight. Liara's hands shook, but she did not move. She had always followed her oath to heal, never to fight. Yet now her oath meant nothing if she surrendered him. She had already crossed the line and there was no turning back. If he dies, she said quietly, then I fall with him. The words stunned the room. Even Aaron's blurry mind caught them, and something inside him sparked. She would stand with him even against her own kind. The soldiers hesitated. Killing a human was duty. Killing one of their own was forbidden. But she had left them no choice. Their leader growled in frustration and lowered his weapon slightly. You have lost yourself, Liara. When command learns of this, you will be punished. They stepped back, leaving her in the flickering shadows. The threat hung heavy in the air, but for now they chose to leave. The door slammed shut and silence returned. Liara let out a breath she had not realized she held. Her hands trembled as she turned back to Aaron. He looked at her with half-closed eyes, his voice faint. You could have left me. She shook her head, pushing back her fear. I could not. She touched his forehead, her cool hand soothing his fevered skin. You carry something. My people fear. I must know what it is. Aaron tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. It's called stubbornness. Her lips curved slightly, though worry still clouded her face. Stubbornness. The word seemed too small for what she had seen. He had endured wounds that would kill her kind within moments. His pulse beat against rules of nature as if his body refused to obey. Something about him unsettled her more than any battlefield. Hours passed, each one heavy with the weight of danger. She gave him water, cooled his fever with her tools, and listened to the uneven rhythm of his heart. Outside, the war raged on. But inside the shelter, another battle was being fought quietly, his body against itself and her loyalty against her people. At times, Aaron drifted into sleep, muttering words she barely understood. He spoke of home, of friends lost, of promises made long before the war. She listened, each word weaving a picture of a man who refused to be broken, even when everything around him was ash and ruin. But her people would not leave them in peace, forever. Already whispers would be traveling back to their commanders. Liara knew what awaited her: exile, punishment, perhaps death. Yet she felt no regret. Protecting him was no longer about duty or curiosity. It had become something deeper, though she dared not name it. As dawn's pale light crept through cracks in the broken shelter, Aaron opened his eyes once more. They were clearer now, though his body was still weak. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Why do you care so much? He asked softly. Liara met his gaze, her own eyes burning with unspoken truth. She did not answer at once. Instead, she placed her hand over his chest, feeling the wild, wrong pulse that still thundered defiantly beneath the blanket. Because this, she whispered, is not like anything I have ever known, and I think it will change everything. Outside, the world burned with war, but inside, something far greater than survival had begun. The morning did not bring safety. Smoke rose in thick plumes across the ruined horizon, and the ground shook with distant blasts. The war pressed closer with each hour, and Liara knew their shelter would soon be discovered again. Her people would not forget her betrayal. They would come, and this time they would not leave without blood. Aaron tried to sit up, grimacing as pain lanced through his body. His chest felt like fire, his legs too heavy to move. Yet his stubborn eyes held the same fire they had the night before. "We can't stay here," he said, his voice hoarse. Liara placed a hand on his shoulder, guiding him back down. "You are not ready." His jaw tightened. "If we stay, we die." She could not argue. Every instinct told her he was right. The shelter had served its purpose, but the longer they remained, the closer danger crept. She reached for her pack, pulling out vials of glowing liquid and small devices that hummed softly. With careful hands, she injected one into his arm. The light spread beneath his skin, easing his breath slightly. His pulse remained wild, but steadier. Aaron watched her, eyes narrowing. "Why help me? Your people want me gone." Liara paused, her gaze steady. "Because I want you alive." There was no time for deeper words. The ground shook violently, dust raining from above. Shouts echoed outside, alien voices closing in. Liara's heart pounded as she grabbed Aaron's arm, urging him up. "We must move now." He struggled to stand, leaning heavily against her. Every step was a battle, but she supported him with strength that belied her slender frame. Together, they slipped through the back of the shelter, into broken streets filled with debris and shadows. The city was a graveyard. Buildings leaned at sharp angles, flames licked at fallen towers, and silence was broken only by distant screams. Aaron felt the weight of every loss pressing on him, but the warmth of Liara's grip kept him focused. He should not have been able to walk. Yet with her beside him, his body obeyed. Behind them, armored soldiers spread through the ruins. Their glowing visors scanned the ground, their weapons primed. They moved with precision, hunting, relentless. Liara pulled Aaron into the hollow of a collapsed wall, pressing him down as shadows passed close. She held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. Aaron whispered, barely audible, "They'll find us." Her eyes narrowed, determination hardening her voice. "Not if I lead them away." He turned his head sharply, pain forgotten. "No. If you leave, I won't make it." For a moment, silence hung heavy. Liara's mind screamed with logic, with strategy, with every reason to abandon him. But her heart refused. She shook her head firmly. "Then we do not separate." The sound of boots drew nearer. One soldier's shadow fell across their hiding place, his weapon raised. Aaron gritted his teeth, his hand tightening around a broken pipe he had found on the ground. His body shook, but his spirit did not. He would not die lying down. The soldier stepped closer, scanning the rubble. Just as the beam of light neared their hiding spot, Liara acted. She pressed a small device against the wall, and with a pulse of energy, the stone behind them crumbled open. She dragged Aaron through the gap as the soldier turned, his weapon firing into dust. They stumbled into a dark tunnel, the sound of pursuit close behind. Aaron's breaths came ragged, his body near collapse. But Liara's grip never wavered, pulling him forward through the twisting passage. Behind them, alien voices shouted, their echoes bouncing like the growls of predators. The tunnel opened into an underground chamber, lit faintly by broken machinery. Liara pushed him against the wall, scanning the shadows for threats. Aaron coughed, hard, blood staining his lips, but his eyes burned with defiance. "Go," he rasped. "Save yourself." Liara knelt in front of him, her hand pressing against his chest to feel the pulse that still fought beneath the wrong rhythm. She shook her head. "You do not understand. If I leave you, I lose myself." Above them, footsteps thundered as soldiers poured into the tunnels. The chamber became a trap. Yet in that desperate place, something stronger than fear bound them together. Liara reached for his hand, and he gripped hers weakly but firmly. The war outside raged on, but here in the dark, their battle had only just begun. The chamber was dark and damp, filled with the groan of shifting stone. Dust swirled in the air where Liara's device had blasted open the wall. Aaron leaned heavily against the broken machinery, his breaths short, his strength draining fast. His body shook with each cough, but his eyes remained sharp, He knew death was only steps behind them. Liara pressed her ear to the stone. The echoes of boots were closing in. The soldiers would soon flood the tunnels, leaving no way out. Her hands trembled as she searched through her satchel, pulling out another device. It glowed faintly in her palm, a disc no larger than her hand. "We must move again," she whispered. Aaron tried to rise, his face pale. His legs buckled beneath him and he nearly fell. She caught him instantly, her arms steady. His weight pressed into her, and for a heartbeat they stood close, breathing the same air, two enemies bound by desperation. "You can't carry me," he said through gritted teeth. Her eyes burned with defiance. "I will, if I must." Before he could protest, the sound of voices filled the tunnel. Light beams cut across the chamber, sliding across walls like hunting blades. Liara activated the disc and pressed it against the far wall. It hummed and then split open, revealing another, narrow passage. She pulled Aaron with her, forcing his weak legs to move. The new passage was tighter, the ceiling low. Pipes and wires ran along the walls, sparking in places. The air smelled of rust and ash. Aaron stumbled, nearly collapsing again, but Liara tightened her grip on his arm, dragging him onward. Behind them, soldiers shouted, their weapons firing into the stone. Bolts of energy ricocheted, showering sparks around them. They pushed deeper into the tunnel until it opened into a wider space. Faint light glimmered above, leaking through cracks. It was an old service shaft, half collapsed, leading toward the surface. Liara tilted her head back, her eyes calculating the climb. Aaron followed her gaze, his heart sinking. His body was failing him, yet freedom was above. "You'll have to leave me," he said again, his voice hoarse. "Go. You can still escape." Liara turned to him sharply, her face fierce. "Do not say that again. I chose you. I will not undo that choice." Aaron blinked, taken aback. The words struck deeper than he expected. No one had ever spoken like that to him, not even his own comrades. He had been another soldier, another number. But to her, he was something more. He wanted to argue, but his voice broke before he could. She began to climb first, then reached down to him. "Take my hand," she demanded. His muscles screamed as he tried to pull himself upward, but her grip was unyielding. Inch by inch, she hauled him higher, her strength carrying what his body could not. Each movement tore at his wounds, but still he climbed because she refused to let him stop. Below, the soldiers entered the chamber. Shouts rang out, and gunfire lanced upward, scorching the stone near their feet. Aaron groaned as pain ripped through his side. He nearly slipped, but Liara's arms wrapped around him, pressing him against the wall. Her body shielded his as bolts of energy struck sparks around them. With one final push, they reached the top of the shaft. Liara dragged him onto the surface, both of them gasping for breath. The world above was no safer. The city burned under a red sky, towers collapsing in flames, and alien war machines stalked the ruins. But at least here, they had a chance. Aaron collapsed onto the ground, coughing hard. Blood stained his lips, yet his eyes found hers. "Why risk everything for me?" he asked again, voice breaking. She crouched beside him, her emerald skin glowing in the firelight, her face both fierce and tender. "Because you fight when all should fall, because you make me believe survival is not enough." Before he could reply, the ground shook violently. A massive shadow rose from the ruins, a war machine turning its gaze toward them. Its weapons began to glow, locking onto their fragile forms. Aaron struggled to sit up, every nerve in his body screaming. Liara stood tall in front of him, her arms spread wide as if daring the machine to strike. The world seemed to hold its breath as metal and fire prepared to crush them. The war machine's eyes glowed like twin suns, scanning the ruins with cold precision. Its body was a tower of metal, legs sinking into the rubble, arms bristling with weapons. The hum of its cannons grew louder, aimed directly at the two fragile beings standing before it. Aaron pushed himself up with trembling arms, his chest burning, his body begging him to stay down. But he could not. The sight of Liara, Standing tall in front of him, her body blocking the machine's aim, sparked something inside him that no wound could silence. He forced his shaking legs to hold him, his breath ragged. Liara glanced back, her emerald eyes widening. "Stay down. Your body cannot take more." He shook his head, coughing but steady. "If it's going to kill us, I'd rather stand." The machine fired. A bolt of searing energy ripped through the ground where they had been a second before. Liara had pulled him aside with inhuman speed, her arm wrapped tightly around his waist. The blast tore open the earth, smoke and fire rising in a deafening roar. They stumbled into cover behind a half-collapsed wall. Aaron gritted his teeth, clutching his side where blood seeped through the bandages. His vision blurred, but he would not close his eyes. "We can't outrun it," he said. Liara's hands moved quickly, pulling another device from her satchel. It was small, cracked from the earlier escape, but it still pulsed faintly with power. "Then we disable it." Aaron let out a broken laugh. "That thing's the size of a building, and us, we're barely standing." Her gaze hardened. "Your people call it impossible. My people call it foolish. But I see something else in you, Aaron. You refuse to fall. That is enough." Before he could answer, the wall behind them exploded. The machine had fired again, its cannons ripping through stone like paper. Dust filled the air. Aaron coughed hard, collapsing to one knee. Liara pulled him close, shielding him with her body as debris rained down. In that moment, something inside him shifted. He had always been a medic, a healer, someone who saved lives with steady hands and calm decisions. But now he felt fire surging through his veins, defiance louder than the pain. His body was broken, but his spirit was not. He grabbed the broken pipe he had carried earlier, gripping it like a weapon. "I'll distract it," he said, forcing himself to his feet. Liara's eyes widened in shock. "That is suicide." "Then it buys you time," he rasped. Before she could stop him, he stumbled out of cover, pipe in hand. His steps were unsteady, his body trembling, but his voice was steady as he shouted at the machine. "Over here." The machine turned, its glowing eyes locking onto him. Cannons shifted, humming louder as they prepared to fire. To the machine, he was nothing more than a weak human with a piece of scrap metal. Yet in that moment, Aaron felt larger than life. Liara's heart pounded as she saw him standing there, defying death. Something in her chest tightened painfully. She could not let him fall. With a cry, she activated the device in her hand and hurled it at the machine's legs. The device exploded in a burst of light, sending sparks across the machine's armored frame. It staggered, its balance disrupted for only a second. But a second was enough. Aaron charged forward, every step tearing through his body, every breath a war of its own. He swung the pipe with all his strength, striking a joint exposed by the blast. Sparks flew and the machine's movement stuttered. It turned its weapons toward him, energy surging. Before it could fire, Liara leapt onto its side, climbing with the grace of a predator. She drove another device deep into its armor, sparks cascading around her. The machine roared with mechanical fury, its cannons firing wildly into the sky. Aaron collapsed to one knee, his strength gone, but his eyes stayed locked on her. She moved like lightning, tearing into the machine's weak points with skill and fury. Finally, the device detonated, ripping through the machine's chest in a shower of fire. The giant toppled with a thunderous crash, shaking the earth. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of flames. Liara dropped down beside Aaron, kneeling quickly. His face was pale, his body trembling violently. She pressed her hands against his chest, feeling the wild, uneven pulse that still fought against nature. Relief flooded her. He was alive. He gave her a faint, exhausted smile. "Told you. I'd stand." Tears burned her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. She gripped his hand tightly. "And I will make sure you do again." Above them, more shadows gathered in the burning sky. The war was not done, but something far greater than battle had been born between them. The ruins still smoldered from the fallen war machine when the next wave arrived. Liara barely had time to pull Aaron behind a broken wall before the shadows surrounded them. Dozens of soldiers stepped from the smoke, their weapons aimed, their armor gleaming with cold light. She froze as their leader barked an order. "Liara, step away from the human." Aaron coughed hard, his body trembling. He tried to stand but could not. His legs gave out beneath him and he collapsed into her arms. The soldiers tightened their circle, their weapons humming as they charged with power. Liara's hands clenched, around him, her heart hammering. She had faced them before, but now they were too many. Her people were ruthless, but she also knew their laws. They would not kill Aaron immediately. They would want to study him, to prove why a broken human kept standing. That gave her only one choice. She lifted her chin, her voice steady. "If you take him, then take me as well. I will not leave him." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Their leader's visor gleamed as he stepped forward. So be it. They bound them both, energy cuffs glowing around their wrists. Aaron was too weak to resist, his body slumping against her shoulder as they dragged them toward a waiting transport. Liara kept her head high, but inside she burned with anger. She knew what awaited them, a cold facility where humans were treated like test animals. The transport lifted into the sky, the city shrinking beneath them into flames and rubble. Aaron leaned against her, his voice faint. "Looks like we lost." She turned to him sharply, her emerald eyes fierce. "No, not while you still breathe." His lips curved in the faintest smile. "You really believe that?" Her silence was answer enough. She did believe it. More than anything. Hours later, they were thrown into a sterile chamber deep within a towering fortress. The walls glowed with pale light, the air sharp with the smell of metal and chemicals. Aaron was strapped to a table, his chest rising and falling shallowly. Liara was forced into a corner, cuffs binding her hands, soldiers watching her every move. Alien scientists entered, their eyes cold, their hands filled with instruments that glimmered under the light. One of them leaned over Aaron, scanning his chest as if he were no more than an object. "Impossible," the scientist muttered. "His body should have collapsed hours ago, yet the pulse continues." Another nodded. "We will find the reason. Dissect him if we must." Liara surged forward, but the cuffs pulled her back. Her voice broke through the room, sharp and furious. "No, he is not your experiment. He is more than numbers and blood." The scientists ignored her, continuing their work. Aaron's eyelids fluttered. He looked at her with tired eyes, his voice a whisper. "It's okay. You tried." Her heart twisted painfully. "Do not speak like that. You will not die here. One of the scientists raised a needle filled with glowing liquid, aiming it toward Aaron's heart. Liara's body tensed. In that instant, her oath as a healer and her love for life clashed with the rage that boiled in her chest. She could not let them break him. Suddenly, alarms blared across the facility. Explosions shook the walls, the lights flickered, and the soldiers rushed to respond. The war had reached even this fortress. In the chaos, Liara's cuffs flickered. She tore free with a strength born of desperation, seizing a guard's weapon in one fluid motion. Energy burned in her grip as she turned it on the soldiers. Aaron watched through blurred vision as she fought like a storm, her emerald skin glowing under the flashes of fire. She cut down the guards quickly, then rushed to his side. Her hands fumbled with his restraints until they snapped free. He sagged forward into her arms, his body trembling but alive. "You came back," he whispered. "I never left," she answered, her voice breaking. Together, they stumbled toward the shattered doorway as alarms wailed around them. Soldiers poured into the halls, but Liara's grip on him never faltered. Whatever fate waited beyond those walls, she would face it with him. And Aaron, though broken, felt strength rising again, not from his body but from her. The fortress shook as the alarm screamed through every hall. Smoke curled from broken walls, and the air throbbed with the sound of battle outside. Liara held Aaron against her, his arm slung around her shoulders. He was weak, his body failing him more with each step, but his eyes still burned with the same stubborn fire. They moved through the twisting corridors, soldiers rushing in waves to block their path. Liara fought with a ferocity that startled even herself. Every blast of her stolen weapon sent another armored figure crashing to the ground. She was not fighting for her people anymore. She was fighting for him. Aaron forced his legs forward even as pain tore through him. His breaths came ragged, but he refused to slow her down. Each time he stumbled, she caught him. Each time his vision blurred, her voice steadied him. They moved as one, bound by something far stronger than orders or blood. At last, they burst into the open air. The sky above was a storm of fire and ash, ships clashing in the heavens. The fortress crumbled behind them, struck by the same chaos that had swept across the world. For a moment, Aaron collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Liara dropped beside him, gripping his face with trembling hands. "You cannot go farther," she whispered. Her voice cracked with fear. "Your body betrays you." Aaron forced a broken smile. "Then it'll just have to betray death too." The ground shook violently as another war machine lumbered into view, its weapons glowing, its frame towering like a mountain. Liara's heart sank. She had no more devices, no more strength to bring down another beast. She turned to Aaron, ready to shield him with her body one final time, but Aaron rose. His body was trembling, bleeding, and broken, yet he pushed himself to his feet. He picked up a fallen alien rifle, its weight almost dragging him down. Still, he lifted it, his eyes blazing with defiance. Liara stared at him in shock. "You cannot fight this." He coughed hard, but his voice was steady. "Maybe not, but if I stand, others will too." As the machine prepared to fire, Aaron squeezed the trigger. The blast ripped through the air, striking the machine's chest. It staggered but did not fall. He fired again and again, every shot tearing at his body. His legs shook violently, yet he refused to drop. From the horizon, human soldiers rose from the ruins, their spirits reignited by the sight. They poured fire into the machine, their voices shouting in unison. For the first time, Liara saw it clearly. His strength was not his body. It was the fire he gave others. He turned despair into defiance. Together, humans and rebels struck the war machine until it collapsed in a storm of fire. The battlefield fell silent, broken only by the crackle of flames. Aaron dropped to one knee, his weapon slipping from his hand. Liara rushed to him, catching him before he hit the ground. His chest rose unevenly, his pulse wild and broken beneath her fingers. She pressed her forehead against his, her voice trembling. "Stay with me. Do not leave me now." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "Told you. I don't stop easy." Tears filled her eyes as she held him close. Around them, soldiers stared in awe, not at her, not at the fallen machine, but at the human who stood when no one else could. In that moment, the war began to shift, not because of weapons, but because of a fragile man whose body betrayed him, yet whose spirit never yielded. Liara knew her people would never look at humanity the same again, and she knew she would never let him fight alone. As the fires dimmed, and the stars broke through the smoke, Aaron lay wrapped in her arms, his breath steadying at last. She had set out only to care for him, but somewhere along the way something deeper had taken root. Not duty, not survival, but something fierce, unbreakable, and eternal. And though the war would rage on, their bond would stand against it. Together, healer and soldier, alien and human, they had found something worth more than victory. They had found each other.